Studio now with the Show Me Institute is Brenda Talent. Brenda, so good to have you here. Get this microphone.
So good to be here, Annie.
So tell us about these. A lot of people have insinuated that the Greitens scandal is really, making it really hard for Missouri to do business. But when we got out of the legislative session in Jefferson City, there's a lot of stuff that was accomplished by this legislative session, and a huge, huge thing for Missourians, taxpayers, tax cuts.
Yes.
Tell us about those.
Well, there are two different categories of tax cuts that we're going to see. The first that I hope your listeners will be excited about is the individual income tax tax cut. Right now we're at 5.9%. It's going to go down in 2019 by 4 basis points. So just an easy illustration, we're at 5.9, it'll go down to 5.5. It'll still gradually go down if our revenue projections meet certain targets to 5.1%.
Wow.
So it's not huge, like no taxes, but it is a step in the right direction to let individuals keep more of their hard-earned money.
Yeah. And
it's a good thing for Missouri because it'll help us grow. It'll encourage the production of income. In addition, we have a corporate income tax cut. And, a lot of people think, oh, why are you benefiting corporations? Well, corporations are people. I mean, that's what they're representing. They're shareholders. And study after study has shown how destructive corporate income taxes are to growth and the creation of businesses. And in Missouri, we're going to be cutting our corporate tax rate from 6.25% to 4%. That'll happen in 2020. And so, and when you look nationwide, that will mean Missouri will have, when you rank corporate income taxes, will be one of the second lowest.
That's great. Yeah.
It is.
Especially being, neighboring the state of Illinois. I watch from my home state, I see a lot of businesses looking for options. This puts Missouri on a pretty solid ground to attract businesses to come to Missouri, and businesses and corporations employ people. They provide livings for people. They provide, ingenuity to the state and to the communities and to the people around here. That's a pretty important thing.
It's incredibly important. And when we talk about Missouri and its growth, we see that actually we've been doing pretty poorly in growth. We rank 48th. So it's important for us to basically say the doors are open. Come to our state, create your business, grow your business, because we're going to be an environment that will support that business growth. And it'll only enrich all of us if we do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Brenda Talent with the Show Me Institute. This Common Sense Public Policy Institute at the Show Me Institute is so valuable to taxpayers across the entire state because you guys are kind of pulling apart the confusing stuff and looking deep into the details of things that taxpayers can participate in to make a difference. And it seems as though the Show Me Institute has a strong advocate for smart taxpayer policy.
Absolutely. Smart tax regulatory policy, smart policies to help our workforce grow. We approach everything from taking a look at whether the free market can really help solve our problems. And we dig deep into the research. So, we're not talking about everything, but the things that we're talking about, we have research to back up why we're making the recommendations that we're making. And so whether it's expanding education choice, whether it's reducing regulations or taxes, whether it's talking about things like government transparency, so taxpayers can hold their governments accountable, we're there. And I hope people visit us at showmeinstitute.org.
Yeah, absolutely. And you cover such a wide array of issues, but you get specific and it's very easy to consume. So if you're curious about how you can be more involved in where your tax dollars go or how much of your tax dollars go, that's another interesting thing I think about these tax cuts is, and I like the way you talked about it. You said if we're in a position we can take it all the way down to the 5.1%. How is Missouri currently right now in a position to offer this tax cut? What have they done to get to the place where they can afford to do this?
Well, in this particular legislation for the individual income tax, what they're doing is they're reducing the federal income tax deduction. Right now, if you're Missourian, if you're a single taxpayer, depending upon your income and how much you're paying in federal taxes, you could get a deduction up to $5,000. Well, what they're doing is they're not going to make you pay more, but there's now a graduated change in that deduction so that they can offset basically the revenue that would be lost by reducing the rate from 5.9 to 5.5%. So it's revenue neutral, but the notion of not taxing the production of income is very important, because what you're doing there is you're saying, Annie, the more you work, the more you create, the more you get to keep. And that's incentive for you to keep on working and doing more.
And that's kind of like the whole point of this thing that we have here in this country, is that we incentivize people to reach for massive success, and we congratulate them when they have achieved that, instead of kind of monitoring and equalizing the outcome for everyone. How was it? Was it a tough job to get this through the legislature? Was there a lot of support? There's a strong Republican faction there in Jefferson City. How did they get this through?
Well, I think it was a lot. Well, I don't know all the backroom discussions and all, but we had two bills that were making their way through the legislature, one through the Senate, which was very aggressive, one through the House, which was a little bit more incremental in its steps. And I think what we saw happen, we were watching all of this unfold. We too, like you, were concerned that perhaps people would have an excuse for being distracted. But at the end of the day, people came together and said, it's important for Missouri to be competitive. And to be competitive, we need to start with our tax rates. And so they got some stuff done. This is a step in the right direction. More needs to be done. We're very hopeful that tax reform will be another topic for next year. There are things that we can do also when we talk about incentivizing work, where we also recognize that, we've got something called a welfare cliff, where individuals who are receiving support, if they work a certain amount, will begin to see a sharp reduction in that support. So discussions about the earned income tax credit for the state, which incentivizes work rather than discourages it, is one that we expect to see more discussions about. And we hope that's coupled with, again, being more aggressive in reducing our tax rates. Because while these reductions will create growth, it's going to be slow. I mean, it's not something that everyone goes, oh, wow, I got to move to Missouri right now. No, it is incremental. It's measured, and that's a good thing. But we need to do more.
Yeah, absolutely. And your reference to that gap that is created, that's something that is a very large frustration for me, because I think there is a political advantage to making sure that gap exists for some. Because when that gap exists, the folks on the other side of the gap that are on maybe in a situation or have had circumstances that lead into needing some help, needing a hand up, they use that, but then the incentive to get off of that, it's not great enough, and the punishment for putting some of your own time and your own effort into that income, it's not great enough. It's actually punitive at the end. But the common sense conservative effort to care for those people and get them out of those circumstances, that is a key to combating this kind of identity politics type of campaign onslaught that we're under quite often. You said there's more that can be done now, in addition to these tax cuts, the corporate tax cut, the income tax cut. What other things can be done, or maybe what are the other priorities that are out there right now?
Well, definitely regulatory reform, which we, right now, the governor's office is undertaking this no more red tape, where really eliminating regulations that have nothing to do with welfare or public safety, so that it doesn't become difficult to create a business. Municipalities can look at how they can cut back on regulations. At the state level, the legislature passed a law which would now recognize reciprocity for licensing. So, if you're licensed in another state, you don't have to come in here and take all the tests all over again. There's those types of things. And I mentioned education reform. An educated workforce is key to attracting businesses. We've got to do a better job of providing better educational opportunities for all of our students. And we saw that also. I think one of my people was here to discuss that.
Susan Pendergrass.
Right. Course access to do that also. And so I think when we, there's a whole range of things we can do. And I would just add, since you mentioned we were talking about the welfare cliff, is that, when people talk about the need to increase the minimum wage, again, that ends up hurting the very people it was intended to help. There are other ways to help those individuals. Look at the earned income tax credit.
Yeah. And the truth is that the best way to help those people is to invest in those people and their own individual success, as opposed to guaranteeing a specific amount of access to, whether it's subsidies or whatever it might be. When you can invest in those individuals and their ability to achieve success to whatever level it might be for each individual, because it's different on a case-by-case basis. I think that's where you can really start to help people achieve that American dream out of a low point maybe in their life. And I'm as a pro-life person myself, I wish we would take all of those dollars that we're investing in, the $500 million that we end up putting into things like Planned Parenthood or whatever. I am for spending that money to help those women get to the point where they can choose life. And all of these other instances where people are being held back by circumstances or by lot in life, we can have a common sense approach to helping these people without having to guarantee that in order for them to get day to day that they're always going to have to wait for the government to show up with their handout.
Annie, you would never tell one of your children, sit there, do nothing. I'll just give you this stuff and then things will be fine.
Right.
You would want them to learn a sense of self-worth, of productivity. Work is a good thing. And I don't think we talk about that enough. Work is a really good thing for an individual to feel like they're contributing, that they have self-worth, that they in fact are an important person. So I just think when we look at different kinds of economic reforms, we should keep that in mind. Work is not a bad thing. It is a good thing for people.
You are absolutely right. It's funny that you bring up my kids, because my husband and I had a little come to Jesus with ourselves to eventually go on to one of our children. Now, I won't name which one in case they're listening. Hi, kids. But we have, a basement, there's a television, and there's a video gaming system. And you come home from school, you go down and you play video games. And that's just kind of what he did. I had read somewhere that it's nice to give kids a little bit of a buffer between the rigors of school and before you say, now do this, now do that, do this. So he or she would come home and go straight to the basement. But then it got harder and harder to pull him out of the basement, or her. and it got to the point where we realized he's 8 now, and we needed to get to the point where he understood there is some contribution that is going to be needed from you before you go enjoy the spoils of the basement, And we started giving him some responsibilities, and he started meeting the need, and he actually took pride in the things that he was doing. And the truth of the matter was, and this is what touched my husband and I so sharply, it was our fault that we were permitting the basement to happen and go a little bit longer and a little bit longer, to the point where the first time we're like, this is what you're going to do. He was like, no, I'm not, But once you invest in him and you invest in these people and you give them an opportunity to succeed, to take some pride in some work and to earn something, they thrive on that, and they do better and better and better. And the rewards and the spoils can still be there, but the investment on the individual has to be part of the process.
And there's such a ripple effect. And that ripple effect is the role model that they provide for the people around them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, the Show Me Institute at showmeinstitute.org is a wonderful resource for folks to go and just look at it. Maybe your thing is education. Maybe your thing is tax cuts. Maybe you're a small business and you're like, I want to operate my business in Missouri. I own my business in Missouri. I want it to be better. How can I get involved? You guys do great work. People can donate on the Show Me.
Absolutely.
You can do that. We encourage that because the work you guys are doing is so vital to the fiscal health and the common sense health to the state of Missouri. Can you tell me real quickly, like some of the things, the activism maybe that you do or how you get involved at the Show Me Institute?
Well, we look at ourselves as a go-to resource. If you want to know what a free market perspective is on a fiscal or economic issue in Missouri, come visit us or call us. If you're seeing something happen in your local government where you say, someone ought to take a look at that, call us, because it may well be an issue that we say, that has wide-ranging application in this state. We need to take a look at that, whether it's, some municipality granting a particular tax subsidy to a group. But we view ourselves as the resource that you can take. We try to make our material very consumable so you can go and share it with other folks and educate them. Education is such a key thing. When you hear the word economics, a lot of people begin to snooze.
Yeah. I don't know those people.
We try to make it real for people. And so we do a lot of different things. We obviously write the deep research papers, but we try to write blog posts that are much more shareable and accessible. And in addition, we do videos. Videos which I think can really show you the heart and the impact of these policies at a personal level. And so we would like for people to look at what we're doing. If you agree with what we're doing, we hope you share it with people to help them know this is what's going on in the state of Missouri. These are the things you need to care about, because you know what? It impacts you. And you talked about your kids. I've got 3 kids too. It impacts our kids and whether they decide to stay here or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And you want them to stick around.
I do.
Do they get enough basement time? Do your kids get that?
I'm afraid I'm old school. I'm so much older than you. It's like that list of chores that you got to click off. And
yeah, we were working on it. Again, it's just interesting as a parent to realize when you're, especially when the kids are super young, if they've got some downfalls, you got to do some introspection before you start making all these judgments about your 6-year-old or whatever it might be.
The good news, Annie, is what I have found is that even if I get frustrated at home with what they're doing, now that they're old enough and I see them interacting with the world, it's like, oh, you don't do that in the real world. You just do that at home.
Oh, absolutely. School just got out and I'm talking with their teachers and getting just rave reviews. And I'm like, well, that's good to know.
So you're doing a good job.
I hope so. I'm doing the best I can. So is my husband. So, yes, I appreciate you being here, Brenda Talent with the Show Me Institute. Folks, go to showmeinstitute.org. If you like what you see, follow them on Facebook, follow them on Twitter, share their stuff, because it's what you can do to make our Missouri a stronger Missouri. Brenda, thanks for being in here.
Thank you for having me, Annie.
Absolutely.